every visitor to Hiroshima will surely be shocked by the catastrophic destruction that one bomb did to one city and to hundreds of thousands of people. Many pause in front of the Hiroshima bell. The photograph of the bell is there today. And one by one they might toll the bell, hear the sound, perhaps be affected for just a moment by its deep sound, and ask for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for all of us. But alongside the picture of the bell, there is the blossom. And it reminds us that after the suffering, the blossom still will bloom. In our Mingri sculpture through the doorway, the sculpture depicts the extent of human trauma. Always there. But equally always there is the light on the east wall, signifying in a similar way as the blossoms do, that a light will dawn on a new day. How our best aspirations for human goodness can be so frustrated. How the best intentions to find peace, peaceful solutions to human conflict can be frustrated. How simple requests of human kindness can be rejected and the best hopes frustrated. So the biblical passage from the gospel today had a neighbour rouse the person next door in the middle of the night to ask for some food so that he might provide some hospitality to a guest arriving on his doorstep at that time of night. But the door of friendship was closed. The generosity of friendship had its limitations. Let friendship be forgotten. There are conditions to our courtesy. There is no point in knocking on the door. The door is closed. Of course, he should have known. He should have known that friendship does not happen just because you demand it. Generosity is not something to grab whenever you want it. There must be a better way. So in this address today, I will speak of the deep human conflict and the difficulties that we have in managing our everyday frustrations. And I shall take it in 4 parts. Frustration in its various forms, our failures to cope positively with our frustration, some biblical guidelines for handling our frustration, and then reaching out to that important, happier way, happier solutions to our troublesome frustrations. We need to listen to this issue of our frustration, because frustrations are very irritating, exasperating, distressing, and damaging experiences. We did not get what we hoped for, what we asked for, what everyone else took for granted didn't come our way. We were born at the wrong time. We had troubled parents. We couldn't find reliable friends. We were on the wrong side. We were born under the wrong star. We were not given the right chance at the right time. Frustrations of our life. We were told to turn right, so we turned right, but it was a cul-de-sac. So we went back into the U-turn, turned left. It was wrong too. Wrong choices, wrong way, could not go back. Frustration. We know it in the many forms it takes. People don't respond to our request. People behave badly. People. Or these are the interpersonal frustrations. How our life goals fail because of other people. And then there is the institutional frustration and the hierarchies within those institutions, the heavy stuff of the institutions. Sometimes it seems like blocking pathways to reasonable goals, but the institutions get blamed for the behaviour of people who block those pathways. And then there's the self-imposed frustration, our negative beliefs about ourselves, our fixed attitudes about what should happen when we think it should happen, our habits, our loss of a helpful, harmonious spirit. We don't see why we should change our ways. Why should we? Why should we open doors when we have set views about when the doors should be shut? And then there's a further frustration, which I call the existential frustration. Life, generally. It could have been better. It is so boring. It is just a meaningless series of this and that. And so we worry, anxiety. What's going to happen next? This existential anxiety. Life itself always holds that gap of frustration. Always a gap. And we can't get any satisfactory meaning as to why that gap is there. Our task is to find our way through the gap, over the gap, around the gap, find some softeners for the gap, something to reduce the gap, something to contain our reaction to the gap, but the frustration is there. So from these frustrations, we know them all. Anxiety and conflict are never far away. And it is not a simple, straight down the line situation. You could easily say, open the door. That's a quick solution. But that quick solution may not be the solution. Each frustration has gathered around it a conglomeration of attitudes and beliefs, of expectations and demands, of memories of things in the past, and of emotional loadings from the past and the present. And so we're constantly faced with the flurry of frustration. The way our mind tries to get through those frustrations, and the way our emotions and moods weigh down on top of the frustrations. All of that. So the frustration can be one thing, but then we lay upon it attitudes, memories, beliefs, and the emotions on top of it. It is inevitable that we will cope with our frustrations in bits and pieces. Will we cope with the memory? Is it the expectation about the future? Is it the feeling of resentment and disillusionment and anger that we're carrying around with us? Is it the behavior, that impulsive, that habit, that confusion that seems to come with every frustration, or with this frustration and not that? Or do we cope with frustration? How do we cope with frustration when it comes down to other people? So we turn on the people. It becomes a fight. They shouldn't have done this, a free-for-all. They're frustrating us. And we want to give up or give in. So we fight and we take flight. Or we see that neither fight nor flight will work for us. So we take up a position of impacted fear. And from that platform, we direct our arrows to other people, to the institutions, to our own bodies, to our minds, to ourselves. So there are the frustrations. I'm now going to turn to an unlikely way to cope with frustration. An unlikely way because it's a theological way. So most of us probably say, well, that's ridiculous, so switch it off at that point. For some, that will be because we've not learnt or heard an intelligent theological presentation of how to cope with our frustration. Often we just have the frustration and we're given a solution. Do that. Don't do that. Behave differently. Have a different attitude. And so on. Old religion, what I call old religion, took the view that there was a simple, deductive solution. You've got a problem, you get a solution. There it is. Take the solution. There is the answer. Just open the door and things will change. We know that doesn't happen. A more recent theology, now more than 60 years since it was first put in written form, it was put forward by a theologian called Paul Tillich. I've spoken about him many times. He's widely known for his little book called The Courage to Be. But on top of that, he wrote 3 large volumes on systematic theology. And in these books and these writings, somewhere there he's talking about a different way of doing theology in our everyday life. His theological view was inductive, not imposing things upon us. You should do that, you shouldn't do that. Not that at all. But before we give the biblical answer, before we give the theological answer, he says, to our various expressions of frustration, we need to understand where that frustration is, how it is affecting us, how we are affecting it. What is that frustration? And what are the reactions to it? In one sense, it is like diagnostic medicine. There is not one solution to every medical problem. We must listen to where the problem is occurring and what kind of problem or pain is occurring and what solutions have already been sought and found to be ineffective, and to bring together a different way of looking at the problem and responding to the frustration it holds. So we bring alongside the problem a trayload of possible solutions to see which will be most helpful. Theologian Paul Tillich called this the method of correlation. We bring the possible theological answers, one theological answer, alongside of the problem, and we put them both together to see, do they speak to each other? Is there any correlation between the two? That's very different. That's an inductive approach as distinct from the other approach, which is, this is the answer. So what is in our theological tray that may be relevant to our frustration as we talk about it today? The pain of our persisting frustration, our tolerance or our intolerance for frustration, the pointers that point to a more sensible, meaningful release from our pain and the unpleasantness of our frustration. So I'm going to put forward to you 4 or 5 avenues from the biblical tray. One says, remember, it is a reality. Often in theological circles, we tend to want to deny the reality. No. It is a reality of our existence. Frustration is such. We can't dismiss it. We can't say it's not there. It is irritating, it's exasperating, it's distressing, and sometimes it's very damaging. We do want to deny it, of course. We want to dismiss it. But it can be a persisting reality. We can easily become victims of frustration, as the epistle to the Romans said today. So, what do? The biblical passage said today, the psalm said, we need inner strength to contain our stress, to tolerate it, to contain our emotional reaction to it, to contain our impulsivity, to contain our destructiveness. Because if we let the destructiveness go, the frustration then breeds more and more problems. So number 1, we need that inner strength to bring about some containment. Number 2, we need to structure our belief systems that reinforce a positive way of coping with difficult, frustrating situations. We know plenty of negative ways, but constructing a positive way. Number 3, we need interpersonal help, interpersonal support, interpersonal resources, help from other people that can help us, our relationships with other people. Either our past relationships, our present relationships, our imaginal relationships. And number 4, we need that positive energy that lifts us out of our past fixations, out of our past powerlessness, into a more positive emotion of life's best. You might have seen it in Barbara Schwartz's statement yesterday's paper. She described in her statement the unspeakable human tragedy that she, as a 16-year-old, went through, she and her family, the dreadful place of Auschwitz. I dare say it could have been a replica, or Hiroshima could have been a replica of it. But she could say, those 70 years afterwards, that human beings can feel hunger and terrible fear, but she said we must also give vent to our feelings of joy. You see, we can be so focused on our frustrations, on our demands for some payback, that we miss the aliveness of joy, that we miss the slivers of joy that float through and in between our conflict and frustration. So that's how we can take this matter in hand. We then need to go to the next part of it. We look for a quiet time, a settled spirit, a new view of ourselves. Do you know your Bible said that in the reading today? Remembering all the time that there is hope. Hope, too, is a powerful, regenerating, renewing energy. So we keep on asking, keep on knocking. Just as we have seen here basic existential frustrations, we can also recognize basic existential strengths to tolerate high levels of frustration and to carry us through to hope. Hope in a more realistic and practical way. So for happier solutions to our troubled frustrations, I'm going to put to you a few suggestions. We need to work ourselves free, to find some release from painful and disempowering frustrations, our ways of coping. We need to toll the bell, and so hear it calling us to be people of a better focus, of a new focus, a better future. We need to hear that in our current situation there are strengths. Strength to contain distressing reactions to frustration. I call this self-containment. There are assurances to take into yourself, assurances that will speak to yourself, words of healing, thoughts of healing, self-assurance, self-strengthening, a stronger self. In all our various frustrations, our strength within ourself can easily cave in. So we need to focus on strengthening, reinforcing the coping self, the contained self, a more confident self. And thirdly, we're able to cultivate a quieter, more contained mind, so that our tolerance for frustration is increased and our negative emotional reactions to frustration is decreased. Increase the tolerance, decrease the emotional reactions. Number 4, we can be so focused on the immediate frustrations that the task of focusing on what is most important can give us more troubles. We miss out on what is most important. We get so bound into what is frustrating us in the here and now that we don't hear what is important, what is most important. So for a happier solution to our frustrating situations, here they are. Focus is vital. Things can get out of focus. Focus on worthwhile tasks, the things that can be done, the things that can relieve the frustration in our life and from others. Secondly, look for a quieter, more contained mind. A quieter, more contained mind. Thirdly, cultivate positive self-strengths. They're given to us, we have to recultivate, re-nurture them. Fourthly, get release from your negative reactions to past frustrations. Release yourself, find release from those negative past frustrations. And fifth, of course, find satisfaction. Satisfaction that you are able to find happier solutions to your frustrations. And when you find happier solutions, remember to confirm them. Say yes to them, and then celebrate them.